Now I want to bring in Roger Stone, who has been a strategist knowing Donald Trump for many, many years and one of the best political minds out there. Roger, the whole show since 6 o'clock, the Sunday show last night and now this morning, a real firestorm between people. Some people thought Donald Trump was over the line and out of control on demeanor and content. Other people thought he said what had to be said. How do you break it down?
I think Steve, he flew right in the face of the establishment, and I think that the boos and the fire points of that debate have resonance with the Trump voter or the potential Trump voter. I mean, Lindsey Graham is extraordinarily unpopular today in South Carolina. As your previous caller says, the Bushes have worn out their welcome. So anytime you clash with Jeb, he is the symbol of the established order. And the establishment order is about no change. It's about a complete continuation of our current policies. Jeb really stands for that. Endless war, erosion of civil liberties, more debt, more spying on our citizens. Nothing would be different. So I think both on substance and on style, Trump still survived again, which is all he really had to do. When you're the front runner leading by 30 points, you don't need a decisive win. What you need is no errors. I think in this case, Trump
is he trying to, Roger, you're a strategist and you're a guy who, as I've gotten to know over the years, is thinking 3 or 4 moves down the board. Is he trying to eradicate Bushism from the Republican Party? Is that what this is about? Because this is deeper than Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush is a beaten man. And I know so many people say Jeb Bush is a good man and maybe his heart went into this. He was doing it for the legacy, all that. It's clearly not a guy who's going to be president of the United States. But what Donald Trump is doing is going back to 9/11, going back to the accountability, who was on watch, going back to the whole run up to the war in Iraq and really in Afghanistan, what happened in Afghanistan and in Iraq, particularly focused on the weapons of mass destruction. It's far deeper than Jeb. Is he trying to go to the heart of the Bush apparatus and destroy it so that then he can take over the Republican Party?
Steve, I think that's the net effect, but I think it's de facto, meaning Trump is not that diabolical. He just speaks from the heart. He just tells you what he really thinks. It's unscripted. It's unplanned. It's uncoached. Nobody puts words in his mouth. He's not operating on a set of polls or focus groups or talking points written by some staffer. It's all him. And he understands that the war in Iraq was a massive error, an expensive error in terms of lives and money. He also points out correctly that the Bush and Clinton administration had numerous warnings about 9/11. And they just failed to connect the dots. They perhaps didn't know.
Did he cry? But he didn't say. A lot of people have criticized, and a lot of people look. There's a lot that's not known. There's the 29 pages in the Senate report about Saudi Arabia. As your books come out, it has all types of detail about your new book on the Bushes. All types of detail about their relationship with the Saudis. There's other countries involved. People have been searching for the real truth on Iraq. However, we have had commissions. We've had reports. They had the thing in the Great Britain going after Tony Blair. There's one thing to say there were mistakes. Another thing to say there was incompetence. Another to say even there's recklessness, gross negligence. You can give any standard of care that you want, right? Negligence, gross negligence, recklessness, complete total incompetence. But do you cross the line when you use the word lie about the initiation of that war? Knowingly lie?
No, actually, I think not. I think that in this case, most people realize that the Bush administration lied us into the war, and Trump is going to double down. I mean, I just know him. He's doubling down on 9/11 for sure, and he will double down on the war. He's not a man who flinches in the face of adversity. It's not his style. Now, there is a great military tradition in South Carolina, and the Bush family does have some reverence. But I think you also have.
I think in the military, there's a lot of bitterness about these wars. I think there's a lot of. Somebody said, "Oh, they're going to get some KIA mothers on and do 30-second spots." My impression, that's not going to be very wise. I think there's a lot of bitterness of the people whose sons and daughters fought this war and the people that fought the war. And I'm not saying they're not patriotic. They're not. These people would always back a commander-in-chief and always do it. But I think the way this thing has been handled, I think that we're sitting there with no victories after 15 years, 10,000 dead, 35 or 40,000 wounded, a couple of $1 trillion flushed. I think there's a lot of bitterness about how this thing has been executed, who was on watch when certain things happen, and I think that's all got to be brought up. But
it's exacerbated by the abuse and mistreatment of our veterans after the fact. So not only does the government screw up, send you off to a war that doesn't need fighting, but then it doesn't take care of the survivors. It's extraordinary. Look, here's the other dynamic that's very key. As long as Bush and Rubio and Kasich are in this race, none of them can succeed. They're all sucking from the same well. And that dynamic helps Trump enormously, again, as it did in New Hampshire, helps him in South Carolina. Trump only need dispatch Ted Cruz, and frankly, he's well on his way to doing that. Ted tattooed himself in Iowa, and that's just not going to go away.
Okay, real quickly, do you think that after the South Carolina event on Saturday night, do you think the establishment then says, hey, look, if you aggregate it up, we're at 35 or 40% of the vote. Somebody's got to take some leadership here. Somebody's got to drop. They start banging heads. And two of those guys have got to drop out before you have the Southern primary on March 1st, correct?
Yes, isn't going to happen. I think there's too much pride and there's too much ambition
and too much bitterness.
Too much bitterness between them. Look, it's kind of interesting. The South Carolina primary was specifically placed on a Saturday before the other Southern primaries in a stratagem by the late Lee Atwater that I was in on when I worked for Ronald Reagan. The idea here was to make it the gateway to the South and to set the table for the other Southern primaries. We're about to do this. If Trump is successful in South Carolina, and I believe he will be, he will sweep the South, and he will continue to do so against a split field.
Roger, real quickly, your two books. You've got one on the Clinton's War on Women, and then you've got the new one on the Bushes. Can you give the titles of both books and how people can get to them?
Sure. The Clinton's War on Women, which is the ultimate expose on Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton, which is really the story of serial sexual assault and Hillary's role as an accessory after the fact in covering up Bill's sex crimes, can be gotten at clintonswar.com or amazon.com. And then Wednesday, big day, the release of Jeb and the Bush crime family, the real story of Jeb Bush and his life of privilege, criminal fraud, drug dealing, as an elitist insider, comes out Wednesday. You can go to bushcrimes.com and pick that up. I'm going to parachute into South Carolina on Friday, doing a full press conference for the announcement of that book, kind of a parting shot for the Bushies.
We will be covering that on live on Breitbart. Roger Stone, provocateur. Thank you so much for getting up early today, sir, and helping us out here on Breitbart News Daily. Really appreciate it, brother.
Stephen K. Bannon, always great to be